It's Thursday, April 8th. Or is it 9th already? Wow. Time is flying. April 9th. It's about a month from exams, or so they would have you believe. So we're going to continue, or I'm going to continue with contracts today, and hopefully wrap up the major points of contracts. And then we'll be able to move on to our last couple topics of the semester. Contracts will be on a test at some point. Last class, I introduced contracts in terms of the kinds of contracts that you could have, and also the first element that we typically see of a contract, which is called intention. Intention means that you're wanting to have a legal document. You're not just making an agreement amongst friends. That you expect to have some protection, and it's a serious agreement. So, intention, I'm on page, you should have your book with you as usual when you open your videos. So, please turn to page 18. Page 18 starts with element 1 of a contract. Now, again, there's some overlap. Sometimes people say there are 5 parts of a contract. Sometimes they say there's 6, but there's some similarities between them. One of them is what's basically expected anyway. So let's just start with intention. Intention means that they want a legal contract. They're not just making an agreement to go to the movies. Or a date. Imagine you had a date and you made a contract. You had an intention. Sign here if you want to go on this date with me. People wouldn't do that. They have no intention. Next is agreement, which is called offer and acceptance in legalese. The parties have negotiated the terms of the contract. One party has made an offer which has been accepted and is agreed to by the other party. Now that also is the receipts that you get when you buy something in a store, and it also, to a lesser degree, is the terms and conditions when you agree on the internet. They're saying, if you want to use this website, if you want to use Google Apps or whatever, Google Classroom, then you have to agree to these terms. Do you agree? Here's the offer. Do you accept? So, offer and acceptance, it does have to be, well, let's check it out. I think we should start with this one. This one is okay.
We live in strange times.
Hello, this is Simon Jackson from learnlearn.com, and this video is all about contract law. Well, specifically it's about the rules on offer and acceptance. So I'm going to be looking at what is an offer, and what we mean by an invitation to treat, how offers can be terminated, and the rules on the communication of acceptance. First of all, let's just go back to basics a little bit, and let's just think about the formation of contracts. Are all agreements legally enforceable? They're not. Common sense tells you, for example, that if you agree to go out with a friend to the cinema and later cancel that arrangement, your friend is not able to start legal proceedings. But how does the law distinguish legally enforceable agreements from other sorts of agreement? Well, there's 4 essential elements that we need to have for something to be regarded as a contract.
This one they say 4, our book says 6.
It's in law. And these essential elements are, number 1, offer and acceptance. Number 2, what's called consideration, and that means that both parties have exchanged something of value. Number 3, there's an intention to be legally bound. And number 4, what's called capacity. But we're looking today at offer and acceptance. Okay, so the person making an offer, just to make it clear, the person making an offer is known as the offeror. The person to whom that offer is made is called the offeree. And now, the moment in time that an offer has been accepted, has got a special significance because that's the first time that the contract comes into existence, assuming the other essential elements are present. Until then, the set of promises, obligations and rights, in other words, the terms of the contract, don't bind anyone. Once an offer has been accepted, the existence of the contract binds the parties to that contract and gives them legal rights against each other. Now, an offer can be made verbally, in writing, or even by conduct. You can get behaviour that implies an offer. Although there's certain kinds of contracts that must be in writing to be legally enforceable, notably in English law, those for the sale of land and some leases, there are very many contracts that do not need to be in writing. So, what is an offer exactly? Well, generally it's a simple enough matter to identify where an offer is being made. Certain situations, however, that might seem to be offers at first glance, but are not regarded as offers by the courts. So, what do I mean by that? Well, there's something called invitations to treat. If I say to you, would you like to discuss the possibility of selling your car, and you answer yes, it's easy to see that the first question is not an offer, it's merely an invitation to negotiate, with terms, such as the price, to be agreed at some later point. Now, a lawyer would describe this kind of question, would you like to discuss the possibility of selling your car, as what's called an invitation to treat. In some situations, it may not be easy to see whether something is an offer, or an invitation to treat. So, what about goods displayed on the shelves of a shop? This is normally seen as an invitation to treat. In Pharmaceutical Society and Boots, the retail chemists were in dispute with the Pharmaceutical Society, who argued that setting out goods on self-service shelves was an offer which the customer accepted by removing the goods from the shelf and taking them to a till. Boots argued that taking goods from the shelf to an assistant at a counter was an offer which the assistant was free to accept or reject. And the Court of Appeal agreed with that point of view. Lord Somerville says that although goods are displayed and it's intended that customers could go and choose what they want, the contract's not completed until the customer takes goods to the till and the shopkeeper or one of the shopkeeper's employees accepts that offer. Okay? Same kind of idea with display of goods in shop windows. That's an invitation to treat. Fisher and Bell is the case there. Media advertisements. What about advertisements? Advertisements, even if they provide details of the goods, the terms of any proposed contract and the price, are normally seen as invitations to treat. Look at a case called Partridge and Crittenden. But there might be a bit of an issue here with unilateral contracts. So unilateral contracts can, in the form of advertisements, can be something different then. Now, what do we mean by unilateral contract? Now, this is a kind of contract that involves the offeror making a promise to provide benefit when a certain act is completed. Most contracts are bilateral contracts. So both parties make.
Don't worry about that.
Hill, Bowen, LJ, Lord Justice Bowen, held that a unilateral contract had been formed. Okay. So for an offer. Something else that can terminate an offer is a counter offer. Now, a counter offer, a farm was offered for sale, by A to B at a price of £1,000. B, the offeree, said, how about £950? And A refuses that offer. The offeree then tries to accept the original offer of £1,000, but the court held that the original offer had been destroyed by the counter offer of £950. What's the big deal there? Why is it significant? That when an acceptance takes effect is important, because it identifies, as I think we touched on earlier on, when exactly a contract has been created. The normal rule is that an acceptance takes effect when it's communicated to the offeror, but there are important exceptions to that rule, and I'll explain those in a moment. Just before I do that, Can I just say that if you want to have a look at some of the other Learn Those Law videos, please follow the links here. So, exceptions to the rule that acceptance takes effect when it's communicated to the offeror. Exception number 1, the postal rule. The case there is Adams and Linsell. Acceptance by letter takes effect when the letter is posted. I'll say that again. Acceptance by letter takes effect when the letter is posted, not when the offeror receives the letter or reads it. Okay, can be tricky. Exception number 2, other methods of communicating acceptance are like telephone and email communication. In relation to telephone communication, the postal rule does not apply. A person making acceptance will know if the communication was not received and will need to try again. In relation to emails, the case law is somewhat convoluted, but if we look at a case called Thomas and BPE, that's 2010, in that case the High Court said, although it was only obiter, that the postal rule did not apply to emails. The ordinary rules apply, and acceptance takes effect when the acceptance is received, although the court said...
Well, anyway, gets into a little bit of legal weeds there, but the point is that there's 2 parts to it. That there's an offer that is made, and if there's a counter offer, then the original offer is destroyed, and it needs to start again, it needs to be re-offered before it can be accepted. So if someone offers you $1,000 to buy something, and you say $900, and they say no, and then you say, okay, $1,000, they can say no, $1,050. They can change their price because you try to change your price, and then you don't have to accept it. So the acceptance includes pressing I agree. The acceptance includes paying the money for the transaction. In this case, it says that an email will actually be something that is an agreement. So you can agree in many ways, so it has to be accepted. Okay, consideration. I don't think I need to necessarily do a whole video about this. Consideration means that something is exchanged, something that we can put in writing. Labor is being exchanged for salary or wages. I'm selling you something from a store. I'm exchanging a good or service for cash. Something must be exchanged between the parties. It can be a service, a performance, a musical group can be paid to perform. So it doesn't have to be a product, it can be a service. But it has to be something that can be measured and that can be, checked to see that it was actually converted, that it was given to. In paying for it, I cannot make a contract that says I will pay you. Maybe this one we do need it, the other ones we don't. Maybe I can say, okay, I'm going to offer you $10 million a month to be happy. I can't really measure that. There's no way for me to verify that that's some kind of consideration. I don't know what's happening inside. I cannot measure it. So consideration usually has to be something that's tangible, external, measurable. We can see it, visible, recorded, or whatever. Maybe there's something in the beginning of this one.
The great enemy of writing isn't your own lack of talent, it's being interrupted.
Do you find the rules on consideration in contract law a bit complicated? Well, this video will help. It explains what consideration is and introduces the rules on how to spot whether something will or will not amount to consideration. So, what exactly is consideration? There's no contract without both contractual parties giving something. This can be described as an exchange of benefit. Consideration may be financial, or it might take some other form, such as providing a service. Generally, that's obvious enough, but when you're studying law, there are some tricky questions that can come up in relation to consideration. Supposing what looks like a really one-sided deal is agreed. Can something that you did in the past before the current agreement was reached be consideration? Can something I've already agreed to anyway be consideration? What about the legal obligation to do something? Can part payment of a debt end liability for the balance owing? Let's have a look at each of these 5 questions. The consideration has to have some value, but it need not represent what might be considered adequate value. In other words, what may seem like a really bad deal might nevertheless have consideration. The courts do not need to consider whether a good deal has been struck, but then...
Right. So it doesn't have to be completely fair. If you make a bad deal, if you pay too much for something that you shouldn't have paid for, doesn't necessarily mean that the contract is over because you agreed to that price. You bought land that was useless.
Must be some exchange of benefit.
But there has to be some exchange, right? Yeah.
So, in Chapel & Company and Nestle Limited, Nestle, the defendants, were offering a promotional deal on the wrappers of chocolate bars. 3 chocolate wrappers could be sent in to get a pop record. Chapel & Co., the claimant, was the publisher of the song. Chapel argued that they were entitled to copyright royalties from Nestle. To decide the case, it was crucial to identify whether there was a contract to sell the records between someone who sent wrappers in and the chocolate company, Nestle. The court decided that just 3 chocolate wrappers was sufficient consideration. Can something I've already done, given a promise in the past, be used as consideration in a contract? The short answer to this question is no. It's crucial that what is offered as consideration is not something that has already been done, given, or promised. For example,
so if I did something for you before as a favor or gave you whatever, some loan of money, I could just have you use that and then make that into a contract. So consideration has to be active, it has to be something that's future oriented. I think those are the main points really. A promise to oh, come on, man. If you change the terms of what is expected in consideration, then the contract is voided and you have to have a renegotiation of the contract. Anyway, something has to be exchanged as tangible, something that you could actually touch in your hand. Legal capacity. Legal capacity has 2 elements to it. Number 1 is age. So for you, it would be a question legally whether or not you under age 18 would be able to legally be involved in a contract or not. Most cases, the answer would be no. You would not be able to make a contract until you're 18. Why? Because they assume that you don't know what you're doing. And the other one is of sound mind. Sound mind. My grandfather, I didn't know him very well. He was, he had a factory. He was kind of a rich guy. I guess he had millions of dollars. I don't know if that's a lot anymore. Anyway, at the time, I guess it was a lot. He had quite a fortune built into his company. And he was dying. And his wife, his second wife, not my grandmother, got him to change the what he would do when he died, who would get the money when he died. So she would get the money. And there was a question, was he of sound mind? He was sick for a very long time. And he signed this contract about, I don't know, a week or so before he died or something. So there's a big question about whether he was of sound mind. Sound mind means that you are understanding what it is that you're signing, that you know what you're doing. So if I find someone who's drunk and I get them to sign a contract, that also would not be of sound mind. So the legal capacity to sign means that you have to be of a certain age and that you're able to be sober and understanding what it is that you're signing exactly. It's number 4. Number 6, I'll jump to number 6 on page 19 because it's the easiest one. The purpose of the contract must be legal. The contract is invalid if it requires parties to do anything illegal. So I cannot hire you to, let's say, take care of someone, or I cannot hire you in a contract to do anything illegal, to sell anything illegal, to do anything illegal. There are no contracts that are able to violate this rule. So the contract has to be something that's legal to do to begin with. There are also some contracts that have to have forms, like the red book in your house, for them to be legal. So there's specific documents that are included in a contract to sell land, for example. So that's legality of purpose. It has to be something that's a legal action to do. You cannot hire someone to do something illegal, and also it must use the documents that are required to show ownership of the property that's being sold. That's true for vehicles too. There's a vehicle registration card or document that you have to exchange when you sell something. Consent. Consent is a little bit, signing a contract must be done with free will and proper understanding of what is involved. If it can be shown that proper consent was not given, a breach of contract exists. In other words, there's no changes that happen, like false statements. I cannot put a gun to your head. Like, you can be of sound mind and know what's happening to you, and I can put a gun to your head and say, here, sign this, or else I'm gonna, fire the gun. So if you are put in a situation that someone is pushing you or lying to you to sign something, then that means that the consent that you give is not based on a real understanding. You're not really giving your own consent. You're giving consent that's being pushed to you. So that's a little bit different from, okay, I'm under 18, maybe I don't have the rights to sell this property, or I'm under 18 and whatever, I'm not mature enough to sell my phone to someone on the street for $2 million so I can go play games or whatever. Or I'm dying and I'm on lots of drugs in a hospital and I don't know what I'm doing. That's legal capacity, but consent means that you're not being forced to do something that you don't really want to do. So those are slightly different. So that's it. Those are the elements of a contract. They're fairly easy to remember, I think. Consideration is probably the easiest to remember. Something illegal cannot be in a contract is probably pretty easy to remember. You have to be mature enough, or at least aware enough of what's going on around you. Should be fairly easy enough. That you can't be forced to do something or lied to into doing something. Should be fairly obvious enough. And then you have intention, which makes sense, right? You definitely want to have a legal, it's not informal, you want something formal. And last but not least is the offer and acceptance, which gets complicated, but you just have to remember that there is a moment when the acceptance happens, whether it's when you agree or the message or the letter is sent to as an agreement to something. So those are the elements of a contract. You'll need to know them. What are the advantages of a contract? Why would we want to have one of these things? Protection is the first thing I think would come to mind. Contracts must have, I'm on page 19, must have an agreement based on an offer and acceptance of the offer. Courts have considered when the contract is made, when we shop. shops do not make an offer when products are displayed on shelves. Not yet. A shop displays their products to invite you to buy them. However, the contract is completed at the checkout. Otherwise, every time you pick up something and look at it, you would have to pay for it, and that would be it. The shops would love that. Excuse me. Okay, advantages of contracts. Verbal agreements and oral agreements do exist to a point and are sort of common in business, but are really bad business. Decisions can be made quickly without having to wait for legal documents to be written and signed. But many disputes and cases in court arise because these agreements are not in writing and clearly defined. Disputes. The advantages of having a contract include that it clearly defines the promises made by each party. So whatever you're expected to do and your responsibilities of the contract are clearly defined, and the consideration, what is being exchanged, exactly is in the contract. If there's a problem, contracts generally have a way to resolve it. They'll have some kind of process to resolve the disputed contract, disagreement. If there's a contract between two people who are going to share in some kind of venture, like an agreement to work together on a business project, then they can put in the contract how much of the profit, what percentage maybe. If you put in 60% of the money, maybe you get 60% of the profit. So profits and losses can be shared. You can put it in the contract. Contracts shouldn't last forever. There should be some way or defined term or a way that the contract gets terminated if one of the parties does not fulfill their obligations. That should be inside the contract. The costs that are involved in doing what is to be done. So let's say you hire someone to paint your house. So all of the costs of the materials and the paint has to be decided beforehand. Am I buying the paint for you to paint the house, or do you also buy the paint? And I give you a budget for that, and you give me an estimated quote price for how much that paint is going to cost. So that should be in the contract. Who is going to cover the cost for any? And you have to think about the cost, and that means you have to have a good plan. And like any good plan or goal or achievement or accomplishment or target, you need to have time. So time, smart, right? Specific goals. You should know this about goals by now. Smart goals. Something is specific. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30 is more specific than I'm rich. I want to be rich in the future. Measurable. Can I measure rich in the future? Yeah, maybe. Can I measure millionaire by the time I'm 30? Absolutely. T in SMART, S-M-A-R-T, stands for time-based. By the time I'm 30, it's a time in there. There's a time and a goal. Realistic, R stands for realistic. That's not really in a contract, but realistic means that, is it really possible to make $1 million by the time you're 30 years old? Yes, it is. A, are there some actions that could help you achieve that? So when you make a goal, you usually use SMART targets to set a goal. And for a contract, you definitely have to have the specific, measurable, and the time-based, and probably the action-based into the contract. So yeah, so I guess if you were trying to make a contract that's impossible to achieve, then that would also be a non-contract. That would be something that would be, where would that fit? Something, consideration. Consideration would be unrealistic. So, contracts give you all the benefits that you have when you're trying to achieve a goal. That's what I'm trying to say. In that, they cover some very measurable, specific elements. I'm going to give you a few questions about contracts in your homework tonight. I don't want to have a long lesson today. I'm done with contracts for now. I will review that on Monday with some questions. Don't forget to check your homework today. I'm going to give you some homework today as well. Not for Friday, for the weekend. And I look forward to your marketing plans.